You think you're free, but how many of your choices were really yours? Freedom is one of the most used and least understood words. Most people live as if they are making authentic, conscious, autonomous decisions. But behind every choice, there is an invisible mechanism of conditioning, beliefs, fears, and unconscious repetitions. And that is exactly where Jung begins to deconstruct the modern myth of freedom. Freedom, for Jung, is not doing whatever you want. It is knowing who is really making the decisions within you. Subscribe to the channel so you don't miss out on reflections that transform the way you see life. We live within systems, social, emotional, mental, that operate as grids disguised as personal preferences. From childhood, we absorb models of right and wrong, success and failure, value and shame. All of this piles up inside us, creating a persona, the mask we wear to survive in the world. But the problem is that the more you believe that this mask is you, the further you distance yourself from your essence. And this is where the illusion sets in. You feel free because you chose a path, but you don't realize that the path was paved by factors you never questioned. Jung pointed out that as long as we are not aware of the unconscious, it will continue to drive our lives, and we will call it destiny. This means that behind the feeling of choice is an old unconscious programming shaping your every step. And the more you ignore it, the more free you feel. Inside a prison you can't even see. This is the first breakthrough, realizing that your current freedom may just be the most sophisticated form of control. So the real question is not, what do I want to do with my life? But rather, who is wanting this inside me? The answer can set you free, or scare you. Because if it's something you've never noticed, maybe you've never been truly free. Everything you deny in yourself controls you. Carl Jung called this the shadow, a hidden force formed by everything you have repressed, hidden, or simply did not have the courage to face in yourself. Fears, impulses, anger, envy, desire for power, wounded pride. None of this disappears. It is just pushed into the basement of your mind. But the basement is not silent. The shadow acts behind the scenes. And the most dangerous thing? It speaks with your voice. It wears your logic. It disguises itself as a conscious choice. And so, silently, it directs you. You say you want to be kind, but you explode inside with criticism. You seek recognition, but sabotage every project that gives you visibility. You claim to love, but demand that others be an extension of your ego. The shadow operates like this, as a silent saboteur, and the more you ignore it, the more it dominates you. Jung said, "What you resist persists." Because resisting the shadow is like trying to hold back a dam with duct tape. It will leak wherever it can. Real freedom begins when you recognize that it's not just the good side of your personality that exists within you. There is also the instinctive raw animal side. And if you don't integrate that, if you don't name your dark impulses, they will act for you without your permission. That's why so many people ask themselves, why did I do that? Why do I always repeat this mistake? Why do I sabotage myself when I need to take action the most? The answer lies in the shadow. It knows you better than you know yourself. And as long as you pretend it's not there, it will continue to make decisions for you. Jung did not propose denying the shadow, but facing it, naming it, integrating it. Not to become better, but to stop being an unconscious puppet of the parts of yourself that you fear. This is the first key to true freedom. Face what embarrasses you, and accept that your light depends on accepting your darkness. The identity you defend so proudly may be the most elegant prison cell you've ever been locked in. From an early age, you were shaped by your family, your culture, your school, your traumas, and your rewards. Little by little, you built a character. An I that adapts, pleases, survives. An I that learns what to say, feel, and even desire in order to be accepted. That I became your identity. You define yourself by labels, profession, origin, values, personality. But few realize that these labels are filters. Filters that hide everything that doesn't fit the idealized image of yourself. The wild, contradictory, vulnerable part stays on the outside. And so identity becomes an invisible prison. You feel compelled to be who you believe you should be. Jung warns us, the persona, That social mask we wear to move through the world is useful, but dangerous. Because when you become confused with the mask, you forget who is behind it, and worse, you start to avoid everything that threatens that image. You don't change your mind because it doesn't suit you. You don't take risks because it's not your style. You don't allow yourself to make mistakes because you have a reputation to uphold. That's not freedom. That's fear disguised as consistency. A rigid identity is a castle with high walls. You feel safe inside, but you also can't get out. And every time life asks you to change, you hesitate. Because change would mean killing parts of the you that took years to build. But here's the hard truth. If you're not willing to break the image you've created, you'll never access who you really are. Freedom requires elasticity, the ability to dismantle yourself in order to be reborn. And that starts when you look at your identity not as a truth, but as a hypothesis. You are not just you. Behind your personality lies a much older, broader, and invisible layer, the collective unconscious. A psychic field shared by all of humanity that shapes behaviors, dreams, fears, symbols, and decisions, even if you've never noticed it. Jung was the first to identify this invisible territory, a kind of psychological inheritance that carries archetypes, primordial patterns of behavior and perception that we all share, generation after generation. The hero, the traitor, the mother, the wise man, the madman, the enemy, they are all inside you, operating as secret codes of the human soul. And the most disturbing thing? They influence your choices without asking permission. You think you want success, but what you really want is to live the archetype of the hero who triumphs. You fear failure, but in reality you fear being excluded from the tribe, an ancient tribal fear. You seek love, but you act as if you are trying to follow the script of a psychic fairy tale. The collective unconscious is like pre-installed software. It dictates what seems right, what seems beautiful, what seems dangerous. Without you realizing it, it defines the limits of what is possible and acceptable. And as long as you don't question these structures, you will just repeat old patterns and thinking you are choosing. True freedom begins when you realize this. Much of what you feel as will did not come from you. It came from ancient symbols that inhabit you. But there is a way out. Jung said, "You cannot escape the collective unconscious, but you can become aware of it. You can observe the archetypes in action, recognize the hidden scripts, and little by little choose which ones you want to live and which ones you want to break. Because freedom is not denying the forces that inhabit you. It is dialoguing with them without being dominated. You are not born free, you are born conditioned. Being free is a battle, internal, lonely, uncomfortable. The modern world sells the idea of freedom as a natural right. But Jung saw something else. Real freedom is not instinctive. It is constructed. It is the result of a brutal internal struggle between who you are, who you hope to be, and who the world wants you to be. Instinct wants security. The ego wants approval. Freedom requires confrontation. Most people will never be free because they confuse comfort with freedom. They think they are in control because they can choose what to consume, where to work, who to associate with. But all of this is just a facade. The real prison is inside, in mental automatisms, in the fears that govern us, in decisions that arise not from lucidity, but from habit. Jung said, "Becoming conscious is a painful process. It's like digging a tunnel inside your own soul. The more you dig, the more you discover how much you are trapped by internal images, unresolved stories, inherited expectations, and there is no comfortable path in this process. Freedom requires you to dismantle your certainties, to lose the image that others have of you, that you face the fear of being alone, without applause, without a manual. That is why so few get there, because being free requires radical responsibility. When there is no one else to blame, when every choice is yours, and including the choice to fail, you understand the weight of being free. But there is a paradox here. It is precisely in this weight that lightness begins, because only those who go through the pain of choosing for themselves discover the taste of living truthfully. And that is the turning point. Freedom does not come as a gift. It is torn out, dug out, built, piece by piece, from the inside out. Without self-knowledge, any idea of freedom is a refined illusion. Most people think they know themselves, but what they know are fragments, tastes, opinions, memorable experiences. That is not self-knowledge. That is superficial inventory. Real self-knowledge begins when you see yourself from the inside and don't like what you find. When the masks come off, when the narratives crumble. Jung saw this clearly. Becoming conscious is a form of rebellion. It is rebelling against the automatic way of living. It is looking in the mirror of your soul and admitting, without filters, everything you are not, and everything you still pretend to be. It is easy to go with the flow. The hard part is stopping in the middle and asking, why am I doing this? Where does this desire come from? What am I trying to prove with this choice? These questions hurt. They are uncomfortable because they dismantle certainties. But it is precisely this discomfort that signals that something is changing. And all real change begins with deep discomfort. Self-knowledge is dirty work. It means sitting down with your inner demons, listening to truths that your ego doesn't want to hear, admitting weaknesses that you hide even from yourself. It means opening old wounds, not to dramatize, but to cleanse. And what comes next? Clarity. Not magic, not a quick fix, but the brutal clarity of what is dragging you down, sabotaging you, limiting you. Jung said that the unconscious only becomes an ally when it is integrated. As long as you don't look at it, it controls you. But when you face it, it starts working in your favor, and that changes everything. Because only those who know themselves well enough to say no to what no longer serves them become free. Only those who see patterns before repeating them become free. Those who understand their own cycles before fate has to repeat the lesson. Self-knowledge is not self-help. It is self-defense. It is the first real act of freedom. Everything you don't accept in yourself, you see in others. Projection is a silent trap. You believe you are reacting to the world, to people, to facts. But in reality, you are reacting to parts of yourself that you do not want to recognize. Jung called this the return of the repressed. What you do not integrate within yourself comes back from outside in the form of judgment, anger, attraction, or repulsion. You do not hate that arrogant person. You hate how much you don't allow yourself to assert. You don't mind other people's control. You suffer because you feel you've lost yours. You don't love someone amazing. You've projected a dormant part of yourself onto them. Projection is a prison because it makes you live in a theater. Every character that affects you is acting out something of your own. And as long as you don't recognize this, you remain blind, repeating the same roles. Jung was surgical. Know all the theories, master all the techniques. But when you touch a human soul, be just another human soul. That soul you touch, your own, must be free of projections. Otherwise, you cannot see the other person. You only see a distorted reflection of yourself. The most dangerous projection is the unconscious one. The one that makes you fall in love with the idea of someone. The one that makes you intensely hate someone who only mirrors something of yourself. And the price of that? False relationships, unnecessary conflicts, constant self-deception. Freedom requires perceptual clarity. You need to learn to observe yourself when you feel anger, excessive admiration, jealousy, or obsession. These are clear signs. Something is being projected. And here's the secret. Everything you project can become a portal, a mirror that reveals what needs to be integrated. True emotional freedom begins when you stop reacting and start investigating, not the other person, but what in them is still yours. You will not free yourself by escaping. You will free yourself by facing up to it. Jung reinterpreted the myth of the hero as an internal map, a psychic journey where the enemy is not outside. It is inside. Fears, traumas, forbidden desires, repressed truths. Everything you avoid, everything you judge as wrong, is exactly what holds your most real power. The journey begins with a call. Sometimes it's a crisis, a loss, a collapse. Other times, it's just a deep discomfort, a feeling that something is out of place inside you. That's the invitation, but most refuse. Because accepting this call is admitting that something in you must die for something new to be born. And that's where the monster comes in. The most denied, feared, rejected part of yourself. Jung said that what we most need to find will be found exactly where we least want to look. And that's why the hero must descend into the cave. It's not glamorous. It's not an external conquest. It is an internal confrontation. The hero who does not face the monster becomes its slave. But the hero who enters the cave faces the chaos and comes out with a new symbol. That hero returns with something that can transform his own life and the world around him. Freedom does not come from avoiding the dark. It comes from going through it, from coming back whole but different. This journey is individual. No one can do it for you, but it is universal. Every human being who decides to live with clarity must sooner or later confront their own shadow head-on. And here's the irony. The monster that threatens you holds the treasure that sets you free. That is why Jung said that where there is fear, there is your work. Where there is resistance, shame, denial, that is where transformation begins. Your greatest enemy is not the world. It is the voice inside your head that wants to keep everything exactly as it is. That voice has a name: ego. For Jung, the ego is necessary. It organizes consciousness, structures identity, creates continuity. But it is also limited, fragile, and desperate for control. It fears the unknown. It hates change. And above all, it fears disappearing. That's why the ego sabotages. Every time you're about to break a pattern, it whispers, "Now is not the time." When you try to speak an uncomfortable truth, it screams, "That will expose you." When you feel the urge to change everything, it asks, "What if it goes wrong?" The ego thrives on the familiar, on repetition, on control over the narrative. That's why it would rather see you trapped but comfortable than free but in danger. It is the invisible jailer that disguises fear as prudence, pride as dignity, cowardice as wisdom. And the cruelest part? It looks like you. You don't recognize it as a saboteur because it speaks as if it were you. But it's not. It's just the part of you that still lives in fear of dying to a new version of yourself. The ego also loves status. It wants to maintain the image it has built, the labels it has earned, the social role it has established. And to do so, it prevents any movements that could threaten this personal brand. You've always been like this. That's not like you. You'll lose respect. These phrases are not advice, they are bars. Freedom requires a direct confrontation with the ego, but not to destroy it. Rather, to put it in its place. You are not your ego. You are what you can observe it doing. When this awareness arises, the game changes. You begin to realize where you are being manipulated internally. You begin to see where you are protecting yourself and where you are holding back. You finally begin to make decisions that don't please the ego, but free the soul. The entire path leads to one point. You will only be free when you stop being who the world wants you to be and start being who you really are. This is the essence of Jung's thinking. Freedom is not doing whatever you want. It is becoming who you are despite fear, pressure, and masks. And that requires sacrifice. You will need to kill the character you created. You will need to disappoint others' expectations. You will need to leave behind everything that was comfortable, but false. Because being yourself truly has a price. Loneliness, judgment, breakups. But it also brings what no psychological prison can offer: inner peace. Not the peace of external silence, but the peace of living in alignment with something that does not need approval. The peace of someone who has stopped pretending. Throughout this journey, you have seen that. Freedom begins when you realize you are trapped. Your shadow controls you if you do not integrate it. Your identity can be a well-polished disguise. The collective unconscious dictates more than you think. Being free is an effort, not a gift. Self-knowledge is your only true rebellion. Projections are reflections of your currents. The inner monster guards the treasure of autonomy, and the ego, that master of disguise, will fight to the end to maintain the status quo. But if you've made it this far, it's because something in you no longer accepts living half a life. Carl Jung didn't want you to become better. He wanted you to become whole, because only those who are whole can choose with clarity, and only those who choose clearly are truly free. The question now is, will you have the courage to become who you are? Or will you continue to play the role that others expect you to play? If this content resonated with you, like the video, and share your thoughts or experiences about this process of becoming free from within in the comments. The journey has begun, and there is no turning back.